Hey again enthusiasts, it's Jonny from Accessibility and welcome to the third episode of the Ride Accessibility Review series. For the remainder of this first series of videos, we're going to continue looking at the vast selection of rides available to enjoy at the amazing Energylandia theme park in Zator, Poland. If you missed it last time, for this series, we aim to discover the best and worst parks in Europe, and hopefully in future across the globe, not ranked by quality or quantity of the rides that they have, but more on how easy these rides are to access for people with varying disabilities. This will include accommodations made for those with disabilities ranging from neurodivergence all the way up to physical limitations. So, without wasting any more time, let's get back into the groove with the next set of 3 rides from Energylandia, and that starts right now with... Frida is a Vekoma Junior coaster not far away from the formidable Zadra in the Smogzygrod area of Energylandia. This is a short and compact ride, and some days, if you're lucky, the ride ops might even treat you to a second go around without you leaving the train. But how does it measure up in terms of accessibility? Well, first we must take a look at the steps and stairs on this ride. Well, here we go with the tired and familiar story of Energylandia and their love affairs with steps and long queues. I'll keep this brief as there's no way someone with physical disabilities will want to climb this torture of Trail of Doom just to ride on Frida. After the queue pen, there are 27 stairs up to the station, which is on par with Abyssus, and personally, once again we see this as egregious, especially given the lack of step-free access. Frida's score for steps and stairs? 0 out of 5. Moving on. Onto the queue line now, and Frida is a relatively short queue, provided it's on what I call a short queue day, where some of it's closed off. To get to the section of queue where you climb the mountain of stairs, from the entrance of the queue to the station, including those stairs, takes less than 2 minutes. But personally, I think this queue line could be cut further, so you don't have to navigate any of it, as Frida gets very low footfall, considering that Zadra is nearby. Our score for Frida when queue lines are concerned? 5 out of 5. Meaning that for this section, Frida scores a total of 5 out of 10. Now we move on. To train or ride vehicle accessibility. And as was the case with Boomerang, Frida is a Vekoma family coaster train, this time decked out in a nice shade of pinky purple. As with Boomerang, the seats, while a tad on the snug side, are contoured well enough to hold even the riders on the low end of the height spectrum well, and do their job just as you would expect. Just like with Boomerang and also Honey Harbour, taking the seat itself is a small step over the threshold and around the lap bars into your seating position. For a more horizontally tall rider, the lap bars themselves are relatively snug, and on certain family focus rides require you to slide into the seat, pull the lap bar down to a good position, cross your legs and then let the ride up push it down the rest of the way to get a verify, if you can, then repeating the same process in reverse to get off the train at the end. As for the human Jenga problem we discussed in the last episode, well, this is fairly prevalent across Vekoma's entire family coaster range, but it doesn't hamper the overall boarding process for a larger rider. Overall though, for a larger rider or one with mobility issues, it's a relatively comfortable train, and since the whole ride experience lasts approximately 45 seconds, it's easily a bearable one if you can get the restraints to get a verify. For train or ride vehicle accessibility then for Frida, we give it a 6 out of 10. But that could improve if the seats are a little more contoured and the lap bars are a little bit more forgiving, as the ride itself offers not a lot of force. On now we move to accommodations. I am so sorry to repeatedly tread through this same mire, but I didn't really witness any examples through my entire 2 days at Energylandia where ride-ups went out of their way to accommodate people in various disabilities. But the station on Frida itself is not overly bright or vivid, and also has no AV package of note, much like a lot of the family rides here. While yes, I think Energylandia could do more when it comes to accommodations, such as including wheelchair-friendly queues or ramps, maybe lift access or other things that can kind of help in this respect. I will throw my standard caveat out there right now, and that is that just because I didn't witness anything doesn't mean it doesn't happen at all at Energylandia. And so back to the usual with accommodations on Energylandia and Frida, I placed my usual score of 4 out of 10, with the caveat from the last episode that if I see any changes on any ride, the scoring will indeed be updated to reflect this. Finally then, let's look at ride comfort. For ride smoothness, I am once again back to treading over old ground, and that means of course we come back to Frida being yet another decently tracked Vekoma family coaster. There are so many of these in existence, and what seems like basically every iteration of them exists right here at Energylandia, or with little to no issues with basically any of them as far as track work goes, and that makes it very easy to rate them all in terms of a general smoothness score or comfort score. This then means that there's no jarring transitions and no bumpy parts of the track as well as this, and there's also no sudden jolting either. The restraints are acceptable enough for a family ride, and with them being lap bars, cause no headbanging at all. For ride comfort then, Frida scores a 9 out of 10, granting it at almost their stamp of approval. Finally then, it's time to look at our Access Adrenaline ride score for Frida, and this one's overall score has yet again been let down by the lack of step-free access and overall accessibility accommodations that are actually capable to be made on this ride. However, in other areas, we can't fault this ride as once again, family coasters basically serve to do what it says on the tin. Overall, the score we gave Frida is 24 out of 40, making it the 5th ride now to earn our now frequently awarded Pass Bore rating. But time and time again I tread this water and say that if Energylandia came back to revisit their installations from an accessibility and not just throughput point of view, I can't help thinking Frida would score significantly higher on this list. In terms of overall rankings, we'll touch on all of these later on in the video. Not bad Frida, but for now, let's move on to the next one. It's Energylandia's apparent forte this, having basically every conceivable type of Vekoma family coaster available, and in most cases, having multiple of them. Honey Harbour is a lot like Frida both in terms of the way it rides, the way the trains feel, and even access, but let's break it down anyway. So, we kick off with Honey Harbour's steps and stairs. After about a minute or so of queue line under the ride, first of all we descend 10 stairs to get to the ride's locker area. Following this, we go through a door and back up the 10 stairs we just descended, but on another part of the queue. Then you round a corner and head up another 8 stairs, then another corner into 8 stairs, and a final one before 9 stairs. This makes for a total of 45 stairs, meaning an instant 0 for steps and stairs with Honey Harbour. Absolutely ridiculous when considering disabilities, or not, as the case definitely seems to be with this one. Onto the queue line length, and including the locker pass-through section, I got to a total of just under 2 minutes, meaning that Honey Harbour meets Frida in this section, scoring 5 out of 5 for queue length, meaning a total in this section of 5 out of 10. But those stairs can seriously just f*** off. I must remain positive here, and so we move on to train and ride vehicle accessibility. This is a Vekoma mine train, or a junior mine train in this case, a variation on their family coaster train design. As such, it's got 2 across seating, with a low rate to the seat back and a comfortable set of lap bars that can be a little bit pinchy to put on if you're a larger rider. The floor of the ride car is level with the station platform, and there's only a small step over the sidewall of the train to get into it, which is quite familiar for anyone who's ridden any of the 48 other family rides at Energylandia. The seats are on the low side, so those less stable may need a hand to get settled in the seat, but the seat backs are at a relatively good height to lean on for support too, whilst you're entering or exiting the ride vehicle. I found the back row to be relatively spacious, all things considered, even if it was at the back of the train, but the lap bars, as before, did have a little bit of pinch to them. It was over on Choco Chip Creek, which was reviewed in the last episode, where I discovered the hack to being a bigger person on a family coaster was to move your legs to allow the restraints to fit, and I used this to great effect over here across the midway at Honey Harbour. Beyond the slight little bit of human Jenga I had to play to get into a position where I was able to ride comfortably, overall the train was basically the same internally as every other Vekoma family coaster in this series, and the trains across Energylandia as a whole, and so Honey Harbour scores a 6 out of 10 on train or ride vehicle accessibility. Heading into accommodations now, and there's only one word for the way Energylandia seems to cater for those requiring some sort of accommodation on seemingly any ride here, and that word is meh, and that's the absolute best case scenario. There are a ridiculous number of stairs on Honey Harbour, both entering and exiting the station, and since this ride is in the family section, it doesn't have a fast pass queue, and so you're finding you enter via the regular standby queue. There's absolutely zero in the way of a step-free solution here, which for a family ride is absolutely and utterly inexcusable. This kind of accessibility issue could be very easily fixed with a disabled entrance to the ride from either the exit side of the station or a special queue that gives disabled pass holders a ramp or access to a lift at the station side to avoid the ever-resting climb through the queue and up the stairs. As for the music and the audio-visual package on this ride, well, again, there wasn't really one of note on Honey Harbour, and this serves to help those with hidden disabilities to be able to better enjoy their time on the ride. Overall, for accommodations, the usual Energylandia caveat has to apply here yet again, but this time I'm downscoring and rating Honey Harbour as 0 out of 10, having only been reduced because to have to climb this many stairs as a disabled person without a step-free access is not just not disabled friendly, but also not even family friendly, which is an absolute no-no for a so-called family ride. But I digress. Let's move on. On to rider comfort now, and for this rating I have to say I found Honey Harbour to be a bit of a tale of two halves. On the first hand, there was of course the light game of human Jenga I mentioned earlier on, where I had to cross and contort my legs to allow the lap bars to get a verify signal from the ride op. These are some oddly profiled lap bars, however, once they were in position they weren't all that bad, as they are from Vekoma's catalogue of new age family coaster trains. So once I pulled them down into my lap and the ride op verified them, they were relatively comfortable and allowed me to enjoy the ride. The ride cycle's smoothness in and of itself was not too bad, and didn't actually display anything like what Choco Chip Creek did in being a mine train coaster because it was more of a family friendly version of it. I'd say there's definitely nothing also to warrant mention of extreme, rough or bumpy or even janky track work. The tracking itself is just as smooth as you'd come to expect from any Vekoma family coaster, in that there are absolutely no jarring transitions and no overly bumpy parts, and the seats and restraints did their job well to hold you effectively in place, whilst being able to enjoy all the sensations and thrills that the ride has to offer. And as a bit of a warning, that drop off the lift hill doesn't half take you by surprise. Overall then, for rider comfort here, Honey Harbour gets a pretty respectable 8 out of 10, granting it access to entry into the exclusive club of being almost there. I don't see these particular issues being resolved, as these junior family coasters are fairly similar in terms of nature and they're not designed to give much in the way of excessive thrills, just enough for a young child or a family to get some enjoyment from. Finally now, let's take a look at the overall Access Adrenaline ride score. For Honey Harbour, we're awarding a total of 19 out of 40, making it the second time in as many episodes that we see a fail rating as far as accessibility is concerned, and the second ride in the Sweet Valley area to suffer this fate. It's downright insane that a family-oriented ride has so many stairs and nothing in the way of disabled access of any kind, as well as no fast pass or specific disabled access area. I find this to be a bit of a shame, as the overall quality of the trains, ride vehicles and smoothness does redeem it somewhat, but sadly we now have our second fail of the series. Let's move on now, and do not make me have to bring out the fail card again in Energylandia. The final ride we're covering for this episode is the Intamin Mega Coaster Hyperion. This ride hasn't yet been seen in our review series, as we're saving that for next year to get some fresh footage for it. However, it is an amazing airtime machine that sums up some downright unhinged forces. But how does it fare in accessibility? As usual then, we first take a look at steps and stairs, and I'll offer this crumb of wisdom if you're a disabled guest: get the Energy Pass. Hyperion has a grand total of 3 steps if you're in the free-for-all queue after the Energy Pass gateway, but a maximum of 12 if you wish to board the front of the train, though personally, for the airtime alone, you want the back row, but I'm saving that for the review. If you're on the free-for-all though, Hyperion's 3 stairs grant it a 4 out of 5 for steps and stairs, but that is on the proviso that you don't opt for the front row and either use the free-for-all queue or the single riders line. As for the queue line, again, I implore any disabled guests wanting to ride Hyperion to get the Energy Pass. Doing this skips the ridiculous contraption that is the standby queue and all its rampy, stairy goodness, and means you go through a metal detector, up 3 steps, and you're at the pre-station part of the boarding experience, which takes a grand total of about 30 seconds, if the queue's pretty much empty, to gain entry to the boarding section of the queue. For queue lines, it's an easy 5 out of 5 for Hyperion, meaning that this section's total comes to 9 out of 10. Very good job, Hyperion. Moving on now to train or ride vehicle accessibility, and I must say, what an absolute breath of fresh air this particular train's design is. Upon entering the air gates in your assigned row, the train's floors are almost totally flat, meaning that you can board this coaster at an almost completely level way. There is only a small negligible lip to get onto the ride vehicle itself, and from an accessibility point of view for disabled riders, especially potentially ones with missing limbs or ambulant wheelchair users, this is a really big plus point. As the design of this train is what I refer to as a staggered wing coaster design, this means the two outer seats on every row sit a little bit lower than the two in the centre, and that offers you multiple options depending on your own preferences for seat height. From reviews of this coaster, some report this to be a tad rough on the wing seats, but from the front and the back of the train on both of my rides, I didn't notice this at all, just a little bit of a wobble. We will discuss restraints when we address ride comfort shortly. However, I rate this train's design highly from an accessibility point of view, and Hyperion scores a 9 out of 10 for train and ride vehicle accessibility. These are some very promising scores. Keep it up, Hyperion. Moving on now to accommodations, and this is so far the only example I've seen at Energylandia involving physical accommodations made by staff to assist people in using the ride. On Hyperion, I found it a bit difficult securing the redundant belts to my restraint. However, the ride operator came along, loosened the belts, which personally I was unaware of how to do, and then went out of their way to not only squeeze the belt into the holder, but also ensure our restraints not only got fit and verified, but were comfortable and able to allow us to enjoy the experience. Excellent work from this particular ride op, and to him I say thank you. You alone restored a little bit of my faith in the accommodations this park makes for the disabled or less able people to use certain riders. There is a noticeable visual package consisting of blue lighting across the whole ride area for Hyperion. However, this isn't so bad that it caused visual discomfort, and the only loud audio that occurs on this ride are moments before the release of the trains. But even with my own sensitivity to certain lights and sounds, I did not find this difficult or uncomfortable to cope with, and so this could count as an accommodation to those with these kinds of issues. Overall in accommodation, I can't rate Hyperion highly enough, mainly because of that extra length that the one ride operator went to allow us to enjoy the ride. So for accommodations, we give Hyperion an 8 out of 10. These scores are really impressive, and just goes to show what Energylandia could do if they set their minds to it a little bit more. Now let's move on. And so, with all of its extremely positive momentum so far, where does Hyperion come out when it comes to ride quality and smoothness? Well, let's break this down part by part. First of all, I said we'd talk about the seats and restraints. These are Intamin's current Skyrus style seats with a more modern and upgraded over-the-shoulder lap bar and redundant seatbelt design. The seat itself is overall very comfortable despite the central nut buster as I call them, and the restraints, if they can get a verify, sit really snugly and comfortably atop your lap without pushing down on you too much. So, a good start to the ride quality with this in mind, because these restraints do not prevent even the most physically disabled rider from enjoying the forces Hyperion has to offer. Moving on to the track work now, and I have to say that this track work is top notch. Intamin really do all they can to optimise the designs they create so as to pretty much totally eliminate jolting, jostling, and for the most part even mild shimmying from the trains as they traverse the layout. The design of the course is very smooth and has plenty of airtime moments, and forces that even when stapled, pretty much every rider would enjoy immensely. There is, as I mentioned, zero in the way of jolting, jostling or rattling, and because this is an over-the-shoulder style lap bar, there's also no headbanging into uncomfortable restraints, therefore creating re-rideability in the best way possible. So, by now, it comes as no surprise that we rate Hyperion as a 10 out of 10 in ride comfort. Very good work, Hyperion, Energylandia and Intamin for achieving this, and easy smooth sailing in ride comfort. And now we look at the overall Access Adrenaline ride score for Hyperion. Now, if you've been doing the maths up to now, you will have seen that Hyperion has scored a total of 36 out of 40, which of course means that Hyperion becomes our first ride to pass with flying colours on our ratings. But those eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed something else too, so let's take a look at the overall rankings right now. Finally then, let's see where the latest batch of rides rank on our leaderboard rank. 9th place goes to Honey Harbour, with a mere 19 out of 40 and the second fail ranking of the series. Next, 8th place goes to Choco Chip Creek. Both of Sweet Valley's anchor attractions seem to score low on this ratings list, with this one getting a 20 out of 40 and the other are the two fail ratings. 7th place goes to Anaconda. Water rides in general are fun, but not with this lack of accessibility. 21 out of 40 and just scraping into the pass, but category. 6th place goes to Frida. This family coaster is fun for the family, but only if your family don't mind climbing the Himalayas to get on it. 24 out of 40 is the score, and yet another of the pass, but for eternity. Joint 4th place goes to both Boomerang and Aztec Swing. These two tied on overall scores and ranks, both getting 26 out of 40 and the pass, but rank that comes with it. Onto the podium now, and it appears to be shaping up with the big guns. We have 3rd place going to Abyssus, scoring 27 out of 40, and yet another pass, but rank. If only Energylandia would do something about their apparent love of stairs, eh? 2nd place goes to Formula, scoring 31 out of 40, and the only pass awarded so far in the series. It could do better, but like all Energylandia, stairs seem to be the overriding issue here. Meaning that taking home the sweep of gold in this episode is Hyperion, with a whopping 36 out of 40 and its flying colours rating. We love this mega coaster, and we love that it was much more easily accessible than pretty much every marquee attraction at the park, all while being right at the front of the park for even easier access. I think it may be hard to find a ride to dethrone this, but we sure as heck will try. And so, with that, we conclude episode 3 of the Ride Accessibility Reviews series. We'll be back again for episode 4 very soon, but in the meantime, what did you think of our ratings? Did you agree with our placements? Feel free to comment down below to provide your own insights, but please once again, keep it respectful. Disabled people receive enough shade as it is, and we don't need more for just providing an opinion on something. If you enjoyed the video and it made you go, ooh, I like this, then of course there's a button down below just for that purpose. If you want to support the channel in the longer term and help us make these videos even better for you, there are of course welcome to subscribe too. We post new POVs on a Tuesday, shorts and TikTok content as and when we wish, these accessibility reviews and also our long form ride reviews, as well as some vlogs from parks, will usually get posted on a Friday. You're welcome to follow us over on Instagram at AccessAdrenaline or our TikTok at access.adrenaline. We're looking at potential supporter programs soon, including Ko-Fi and Patreon, so let us know what perks you'd like us to include. Until we meet again, I have been Jonny. This has been another Ride Accessibility Review from Access Adrenaline, where we aim to help deliver those theme park thrills for all. Thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time. Toodaloo!